Welcome to the Selfish Podcast. Today we have Jess Starwood. Now she is an author, a forager, an expert in that field, and a herbalist. So I'm really interested to get to know her life, her story, and how she does what she does, why she does what she does. So thank you so much, Jess, for being here. And first, I want to get into your childhood. I want to know a bit more about you. I want to know what life was like pre 10 years old. Paint me a picture of what your life was like.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. It's always a pleasure to share stories and how I got into what I do. But yeah, well, as a child, my parents were really interested in nature and being out in nature, and we would go camping for weeks at a time. They weren't necessarily foragers or whatnot. They just enjoyed being out there, being away from the city. And I feel like that really stuck with me. And I was able to return to that, at a later time in life when I really needed that.
Where did you grow up? What was the town, like the city, which state? And because I can hear an American accent, but I don't actually know whereabouts you're from.
I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona, in the United States, and it's the Sonoran Desert, so lots of saguaro cactuses, and well, everything has spines and prickles on it, so very dry, and uh, lots of rocks, lots of dirt. But we had the mountains were not too far away, so we would go up, into the pine forests, into the mountains, and we eventually ended up with a cabin up there, and that was our retreat from the desert heat.
That's nice. So you stayed around that sort of area when you went camping with your parents. It was in the same state.
Yeah, they liked to stay local. They weren't much for going off into exotic places. They were pretty humble people who liked to keep things pretty simple, and I think that also, in regards to what I do now, I've learned that that really cultivates a sense of belonging, a sense of place, where you keep going back to the same areas, the same plants, the same regions, and you really get to develop a relationship with it.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that makes sense. Do you remember when you was younger, like having a first ambition or dream as to what you wanted to do when you was older, or like a career, or just like a something you really wanted?
Uh, well, I definitely had a goal in mind. I was fascinated with books, just
Hmm.
had so many books, and my goal was to someday write a book. And I have just recently accomplished that goal, some
Oh, well done.
30 years later. Thanks. And yeah, I would write little stories. I would write books about the things in the desert I would find. It was, yeah, just fascinated with the idea of putting something down into words and pictures, and it's something you can hold and you can share it, you can give it to somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, nice.
just
What did your parents do apart from like, what did they do for career and stuff when you wasn't camping?
my dad actually he has a uh, concrete company. They build swimming pools,
Okay.
and yeah, so he was into construction, and he barely finished high school, but was very successful in his business. My mom helped him out with that, but she started out as an artist, a painter, and she worked for a printing company for a little while. And when I was born, when my brother and sister, were born, my dad was like, "No, you need to stay home. You need to take care of these kids. Don't send them to daycare. You don't have to work." And he provided, that
Yeah.
really, it's really important to have that connection with your parents.
Yeah, it's very different these days with a lot of people. I know I've got many friends who have children. I don't myself, but they're working, both of them are working, and one of them's only working to pay for the childcare. Their full wage pretty much goes on the childcare, and I'm like, doesn't make any sense to me. And I'd also just want to be with my child.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's a bit strange. So it's great you got that. You was able to have that opportunity and to have your mother there full time. How was she with like your process of books and that? Was she interested in books and writing as well, or is that your own passion when you was younger? Where did all these books come from when you was a child?
I'm not really sure. Maybe it could have come from my grandma and my uncle. My uncle was quite a book nerd. He loves to read. I mean, even just to pick up a encyclopedia, he would enjoy just reading that and knowledge, and always has interesting facts to share that he's read about. And I remember going over to, because my uncle lived with my grandma, and so going over to visit them, there was always just books around. There was magazines, National Geographic and nature books, and I just remember picking those up and being lost in those pictures and the stories. And that really, I think, would be my best guess on where I was inspired by that. But yeah.
Nice. And what would you say, like, this could be pre-10 years old, pre-20. What comes to mind when I ask, what was your first struggle in life?
Let's see. Probably the event that really affected me the most was my brother being diagnosed with juvenile diabetes at 5 years old. And seeing the health challenges that my mother struggled to learn how that disease worked, how it affected him, how to care for him. And he a few times had seizures. One time ended up in the hospital due to hitting his head so badly. I think that had just a really big impact on me as far as my perspective of because diabetes is a disease where your blood sugar affects how you feel, how your health, and it's very, very drastic changes, and it has to be monitored, has to be.
And it's quite common now with diabetes, whereas I imagine back then as well, if you're saying he was 5, that's quite some years ago. That it's also, I imagine you don't know anyone else that's having that going on.
Yeah, no, especially with juvenile diabetes, as a kid, you're insulin dependent, and nowadays, the type 2 diabetes is a lot more common. People who are overweight and poor diets, that it can be managed a lot better. But when it's this other type, he's set to have this for the rest of his life, and no matter what, he's always going to be on insulin. So that really affected me, and I wanted to help him.
Yeah, and how do you think that experience has transformed since then to now? How has that sort of influenced your life later?
Well, just knowing that what we eat and how the foods that we choose really makes an impact on how we feel. For him, things that have high sugar in it, he can't eat without drastic effects on his body. And now I understand that connection very deeply, and try to teach that to other people as well.
Yeah, because for me personally, like my mother suffered extreme schizophrenia, and since I was a child, and it really took me a long time. Like it was my sort of worst suffering for most of my years, but it took me a long time to really appreciate that. It gave me an insight into my own life and appreciation for my sort of mind and conscious actions that she had such a lack of. So it was like a gift in a way. I see it now. Whereas at the beginning, it was just pain and suffering. And it seems like it's been the same thing for your brother. It's actually given you a gift, a certain sight into the world that so many actually need right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And what was school and stuff like for you when you was younger? How was school?
I loved school. I absolutely enjoyed uh, learning, just fascinated with science and reading and writing. It just was, yeah, I just loved school. I loved the challenges of it. It gave me something to uh, do. I don't know. I guess, yeah. Short answer is I just love school.
Oh, nice. Yeah, it's interesting. Lots of people I've had such different feedback from people's sort of trips in school and how they felt from loving it to it being the worst thing that they can remember.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it socially it was difficult, but instead of focusing on, the negative social, I was very quiet, very shy in school, but I, had work to do. I was focused on, doing well and exceeding in that.
And when did foraging enter your life?
Uh, let's see. So foraging, I mean, as a kid, I do have a few memories of, reading a few books about kids who ran away and lived in the wild. And I thought
Hmm.
that was the most fascinating thing in the whole world. And I was like, yeah, someday I'm gonna run away and live in the wild. My favorite book was one called My Side of the Mountain, and I'd read it several times. But the problem was I lived in the desert, and that
Hmm.
book takes place in upstate New York, where there's trees and so much more food available and rivers. Whereas the desert was a little more challenging, so it wasn't going to happen that way.
Yeah, I imagine. And where are you now? Because I see your Instagram's full of like beautiful pictures of nature and stuff. Whereabouts are you now?
I am based out of Southern California, just outside of LA, but I travel quite a bit to where a lot of people don't quite know where I am from. Um, but yeah, based in California.
And it was actually I found you through another podcast called the Mushroom Hour, I think it's called. I was listening to your interview on there while I was looking for mushrooms because I really like foraging and trying to find. For me, it's about the nutrition, and I see foraged foods as if they've managed to grow and flourish in nature, that they've had every sort of bit of nutrition they need to grow, so they're going to be complete. That's how I sort of see it. So I'm like, if the more food I can eat that's wild, uh, is going to have more content to it. And there's also the freshness of it, it being going from your sort of from the land into your mouth pretty quick. And mushrooms I find just fun to look at and to find. So that's how I found you. And I find it very interesting that you used to do professional foraging. Is that something you still do, or is that something you've done for a while?
I did it for a while right before the pandemic happened. I worked for a couple of restaurants, a couple of chefs in LA, very high end Michelin starred chefs. And when the pandemic hit, it changed everything, changed how restaurants operated, changed how my business was, and it is challenging foraging for restaurants and chefs. There's a very specific business model where you have to provide a larger amount of food than what you would normally be collecting for yourself or your immediate family. Have to serve so many people a night, every night, or a couple times a day maybe. So it I did work for one restaurant who wanted to do um, as much foraged food as possible, but it came to a point where they just couldn't afford the amount of food to to supply them, for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and to have,
Yeah.
a low price point too.
Well, what was their motivation to go for foraged foods? Was it because it tastes better, or was it because it sells and they can say that their food's fresher than others? What was their motivation? Do you know?
I believe it was to be local and to have, to cultivate that local flavor, to say that everything that they're using comes from, the surrounding area. And, it is, wild food is kind of trendy right now, or has been in the last several years, especially with, and now when everybody's looking at food a little bit differently with supply issues.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's a certain sustainability, like you said, with the restaurants, with the amount they want, to how much you pick. For me personally, like I could never, I'm not good enough to pick any for any means of professional. I just know certain ones, and I'm constantly learning and developing my skills to learn more. But I have a few favorites that I just find, like I think we call it goose foot. I think there's a few names for it. I
Mm-hmm.
can't think what the proper one, but like that one's so easy to find and identify and tastes good and grows in abundance. And um,
Yeah.
that and a few simple mushrooms. Like I said, mushrooms are, when I've shared it with family or with friends, it's like there's almost this real taboo about eating mushrooms. And I'm just eating edible mushrooms, not like hallucinogenic ones, but they're terrified. And
Mm-hmm.
it's quite interesting. But there's so much content now out there to see and to learn from, and sort of safety measures. Like anyone that does get into foraging or things, I'm always telling them, like, really know what you're going to eat. And I always do like a test to have a tiny bite of something if I've never had it before, and wait. And then the next day, if I was fine on that little bit, the next day I'll have it for a meal.
Yeah, that's a pretty good way to go about it. A lot of people can be sensitive to different things, and it's always good to start
Yeah.
slow with
Can I hear
new
a cat
foods.
or a baby? It sounds like a cat.
That is my cat.
What's your
Uh,
cat's name?
this one is Bella. I have three cats, and this one is my very needy cat who wants fresh water from the sink.
Okay. Yeah, I have four cats and a dog.
Oh,
Um, and all my cats are named after mushrooms. So the
oh,
mum
are
is
they
actually,
really?
yeah, so the mum is called Mushrooms. That's her name, Mushrooms. Uh, then
That's
the
adorable.
Champiano
Ah,
is it's actually her daughter, because she gave birth, and then we ended up keeping the kittens. And then we got
oh,
Shiitake, uh, Buttons, and Chestnut.
oh,
And,
that's fantastic.
so we and they come mushroom foraging. We walk them everywhere. They come with us on hikes,
Oh,
and they come
really?
out, and they literally come with us while we're looking for food, which is really nice. That's a real different experience. And if anyone did stumble across us, I think they'd be pretty shocked.
I that would be quite a sight to see.
Yeah, and similar to you with the camping, like my childhood, I was camped a lot. And like I said, my mum was really ill, so I had to sort of duality. She was a single mother and very sick, but my father would take us on the weekend still, and we hid all the trauma that was happening because we just were so happy to be on the weekend. But he was never sort of had much money, so he would buy a van and put a bed in it, and we'd go camping on the weekends. And I got a real nice duality of sort of a crazy week, and then like being just immersed in nature. And he would never pay for camping. We'd just go somewhere off grid somewhere and camp up. And now later in my life, I can appreciate that experience. Like, there's so much that just being, especially when you're a child, being out in nature gives you. And I wasn't at that time. I didn't even know there was such thing as foraging when I was a child. You don't look at food, plants, or this is not
Mm-hmm.
for me anyway. I just didn't notice them, and I think my dad had no clue. He was giving us, like canned beans and noodles, yeah, like the
Uh,
sort of camping food.
yeah, yeah. I take my kids camping as often as I can.
Yeah, do they like to forage? Are they
Um,
interested in it, or do you show them stuff and they're not too keen, or how do they find that with, 'cause especially for children, like now there's so much product in the shop that you can eat. How do they
right.
see, and the influence of a peer pressure of kids and other kids, and if you say I'm going out to pick food from the land, like how does that work with your children?
It's kind of mixed. They do enjoy it, but they don't want to. make a big deal about it kind of thing. Because they still got to be cool. They're at that age of worried about what their friends think, and, running around picking mushrooms isn't, they don't think it's the cool thing to do because that's what mom does. But,
Yeah.
I think that, it is kind of trendy right now, and all their friends think what I do is pretty cool. But, that's what mom does.
Yeah. And how old are your kids?
10 and 13.
Okay, so it's a nice age, but also, yeah, that's the age you sort of start to not want to do what your parents do, no matter how good
Yeah,
it is.
right, right. Yeah.
And how did you get into? Because I know you also run courses teaching people about. Is it just foraging or is it crafting? And so what do you teach in your course?
I mostly teach, what to eat, how to prepare it, and that there is pretty much what, the majority of it is. I do teach some herbalism as well. I how to make medicines and what to use them for, how to use them properly and safely. Um, also teaching people how to connect with nature, and just really, immersive events too, where, I take groups out into the wild, and we camp and eat and, learn. There's no better way to learn about, the subject, unless, you just immerse yourself into it, and start building that relationship with it.
Yeah, no, that sounds amazing, and it's like, yeah, that would be such an experience for like. Do you get families that come, like children and their parents, or is it mainly older people that turn up for that sort of thing?
I get a good mixture of, older people who've never been out at all into nature. I have young people. I teach homeschool groups. And like, even just this week, I had a 16-year-old who contacted me asking me for private classes. And, it's this nature connection applies to everybody, no matter how old you are.
Yeah, it was a process for me to sort of actually realize how disconnected I was from nature, although I'd been in parts when I was younger and stuff. But growing up in a sort of city, um, I didn't realize how much sort of discomfort I had until I immersed myself in nature. Like there was a lot of fears and, there's just being uncomfortable. Like I spent a period of time just going into the woods, tested myself at night time because I was so uncomfortable to be in the woods when it was dark. And then I'd be uncomfortable thinking about bugs and uncomfortable thinking about certain just little things. And I didn't realize how many fears I had. But I think there's a big culture, like if you watch movies and stuff, there's a lot of stuff that they make the wild look really scary. It's like a foreign concept to go into the woods.
Right.
But that was,
Yeah.
but it's a beautiful place, like especially if you've got uh, any issues or any sort of stress. I was talking to my partner earlier about animals, and we're saying like watching animals in their natural environment sort of brings you into like such a state that you forget everything else that's going on. Like it brings you just to this really nice place really quick. It's like a meditation type thing. It's just, you forget everything. I don't know if it's the same for you, but for us, we both were like, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Being in nature, you have to become very present, and, aware of your surroundings. You have to, um, especially when you're camping or backpacking, planning ahead on where you're going to be and taking care of yourself, thinking about water, thinking about food, and just, yeah, animals are definitely a thing. Even bugs, ticks are a big issue, at least on the East Coast out here. They carry Lyme disease and stuff. And so, being aware of your immediate surroundings. Whereas, in the city, we have this different feeling of, um, you know, of this safety of like, oh, everything's going to be okay. I'm going to go in my house, close the door, everything's fine. Um,
yeah,
or, but yet we still have this stress, I feel, that, participating in the world, or participating in, things we have to do, things we're expected of. And in
Yeah.
nature, all that goes away, and you can just be present where you are.
Yeah, I was actually, my last podcast I'd done that's going up this Sunday was with a wheelchair bodybuilder. And he
Mm.
was talking about the difficulties he has in life are all to do with the city and judgment and being not allowed into places because of like they haven't got the health and safety certificate that they need to have someone in a wheelchair even come into their store or their museum. And he said he literally is turned away from places, which I didn't even know was a thing.
Wow.
And he was saying this, and he goes, but the forest never turns him down. The forest never judges him. And he goes mushroom picking in his
Ah,
wheelchair in the forest. And we was
wow.
talking about that enough. And he's just saying like there's nothing more beautiful than going into nature. And he goes, that's the only place he feels really at home and at peace. And he's going, but the difficulty comes into the city and the pressure. So yeah, it
Yeah.
just reminded me of that. That was really interesting. And so many people, like now I'm living quite an alternative lifestyle where I live full time in a van now.
Oh.
So I'm always on the road going into nature.
Hmm.
And I said it's such a privilege to be able to be immersed in nature, but sometimes I have to go into the city for things,
Hmm.
that you can't forage,
Yeah.
and yeah, you do feel the pressure, you feel the difference of that sort of system and placement. And I think it's finding a balance. For me, it's all about balance, and it's like not trying to say I'm anti-city, I can't go to cities, and and I'm not 100% nature. It's like both exist in this world, and you got to
Right.
have a balance within there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And with, like you were saying earlier, how the COVID affected the foraging, how would you say the last 2 years have like affected you in your own self-development in life?
Um, it's been a real challenge. I lost a lot of friends this year. People moved away. Nearly every single one of my friends left California this year, just because of the restrictions and the way our state has been handling things. And I can't leave. I would have loved to have left 20 years ago, but I have my two kids I share custody with, and yeah, I feel like the pandemic, personally, it brought up a lot of um, issues that I dealt with when I went through my divorce, which was very traumatic. And I feel like I kind of had a chance to revisit a lot of those issues, and there was some more healing that needed to be done. And, kind of reestablishing some of my self-sufficiency
Mm.
practices that I had to rely on when, I don't have any family here. I don't have friends here now. And, all the friends that I've made in the last 6 years have all left this year. And it's kind of feel like just starting over. And
Yeah.
my landlord just sold my house from underneath me. So I'm now have nowhere to go. Housing crisis this is crazy right now here, to where I can't find somewhere to live, and trying to provide, a stable home for my kids. I do also have a van, but I only travel part-time in that. And I just can't live in a van with my kids, according to the law. So um, it's
Yeah,
pretty
I've
weird.
met a few families that have had difficulties, and even in Europe, the countries and the rules are different. Some you can't because they need to be in a school. Some try and get them
Hmm.
homeschooled, but they need to then go back constantly for certain tests, and it seems to be quite a difficult placement. I've even seen a family who they were living in tents in this like trying to think what you call it, like a commune type area. It was like a
Mm.
piece of land where loads of people go to stay for a couple of nights, but some people have been there for years.
Oh,
And there
wow.
was a family living for 7 years. They lived in tents and they had like 6 or 7 kids, and they just had another child had just been born like a couple months before we went there for a couple of weeks.
Oh,
And
wow.
but they had all their kids taken from them because
Mm.
the government said you're not they're meant to be in school because they were between the ages of sort of, apart from the newborn, they were all between like 5 and 15,
Yeah.
and they all looked like healthy kids. They were told that they was underweight because they were slim. They didn't have a pot belly, and
Yeah.
that's now underweight. And
Yeah.
they said, oh no, they're too skinny. They should be in school, and they took them. I don't know what happened to them because, again, everyone's moving about so much and with everything going on. But it's really interesting to see because I plan to have kids myself one day, and it's just like, yeah, how, where do you have them? Where can they go within your lifestyle?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I really wish you the best that you get through the situation. But if you found, you said all that come to surface, do you feel you're still just in a healing process, or do you feel like you've actually managed to heal some things because it's during that time?
Yeah, definitely have worked through some things that were still lingering, and just realizing it's okay to be alone, and that this is my journey, this is my path, and no one's going to come save me. I have to, you know, keep moving forward. And as much as I would like to have a partner, it's, I live an unusual lifestyle, and it's hard to, I would have to give up a lot to make it work for somebody else. And, this is just where I'm at in life. And this is, go ahead.
What have you found in this time that's actually helped you through that process? Is there any particular sort of methods or techniques or practices, whether it's just going into nature? Have you found there's certain things that have helped you through that process?
Yeah, just like when I was going through my divorce, I went into nature. I went for hikes as often as I possibly could. Now it's a little bit more, I'm exploring, new places, going different places, learning about different areas, different regions, different plants, and expanding my knowledge. And that has really helped me reconnect with nature, with the world, stepping away from all of this, all the news, turning off the screens, turning off all of this noise that's being generated, all this fear about about the pandemic. And so, yeah, just being in nature. Again, it's the answer to many, many things.
Yeah. And if you don't mind going into more detail, say if it's too uncomfortable, it may be a fresh wound, and like you said, you're going through healing. But how long ago was the divorce?
6 years ago now. And it, yeah, it really um, shook up my life quite a bit. And, but it forced me though into kind of my own person and my own path. And I am, as much as difficult as it was to lose my kids half time, I was with them. I also was a stay-at-home mom and stayed with them every day. I was with them every single day. And then to suddenly have them gone for half the time was quite traumatic.
Yeah. So
And
you now like, because when I was younger and my parents divorced, it was like always the female got the custody. It was like my dad tried, and I said my mum had really extreme mental health issues, but she still managed to get custody.
mm,
Um, it's very hard for the male to get it, but I don't know if it's changed or not. But do you have them for a certain amount of time? Like I said, for me, it was the weekdays with my mother and then the weekends with my father. And all my friends, like most of my friends, had parents that were divorced, and that seemed to be
mm,
the norm, should I say, the normal thing.
mm. Um, well, with California, it's very difficult to get anything other than 50-50. So we split our time equally. And yeah, even though my lawyer had told me that it would have been no issue to have them, during the weekdays and then weekends at dad's or something to that line. So yeah, I was misled quite a bit, to where I don't know if I would have made that decision or not. But Yeah, and it's been tough on them. You know,
Yeah,
yeah.
because it's a hard thing to know as well. Because if you get the Monday to Friday, you get the school, and you also have your own work and everything. Then whoever gets them on the weekend sort of gets. They're normally not working, and the kids aren't doing anything. It's almost like that's the better time. So maybe a 50-50 split. You get to share some of the school, and you get to share some of the good time too.
Yeah, it does work out to where they get to, yeah, share both, school and playtime with both
Yeah,
parents. And
yeah, and I share a lot of my life things that I never thought I would actually open up about and share or talk about. Like I said, my mum's mental illness is something I thought I would hide away forever, and it was actually
mm,
sharing it with other people that connected. But I have a YouTube channel as well where I just share my perspective and my journey and things that have helped me in case it may help someone else. And I've had feedback that it has, so it's been really nice. But I've also been divorced.
oh,
I was divorced. When was it? About 10 years ago now. I was with my, as you would call in America, I think high school sweetheart. We met at
ah,
15. We was together for 10 years. We got married. And I truly thought 100% committed. I thought I was going to be with her to the very end. I couldn't see anything other than
hmm,
that. So when it ended and it was her choice, it was, like I said, devastating. It was so hard, so painful. But to not,
yeah,
you lose the person you love, but you lose the whole future. And you
right.
lose a family. Like I was attached to her family. She had quite a large family, and they
Oh,
were my brothers, my sisters. Her mum was like a new mum for me, especially because mine was never able to be a mum.
mm,
I had this other one that was like a normal mum, and it was like, oh, she cooks me dinner when I go around, and it was like really nice, and she really cared for me. So
mhm,
I share that process with people and share like just to let other people know, what happens. And for me now, I'm just grateful for the experience. I see it as my heart was broken, but it was broken open.
mm,
It's enabled me to be more compassionate, more loving, and just see life in a different way. But yeah, my heart
right.
goes to you. It's a painful experience, and like you said, 6 years later, COVID
Yeah,
brings that straight back up again.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
mean, everyone's gone through this experience in many different ways, and they said lots of people have managed to find something that's actually though gifted them and altered their perspective. And they said we're not in control of the external world, and I think this pandemic has clearly shown us that. But there is some control within. Yeah, and you're saying then you managed to get a book out. What's your book about, and how did that come to be? Because you said that's been recent, so did you do that during COVID?
I did, and actually, now that you brought up earlier about if I how much I liked books as a child. That was my escape from the social troubles I had at school, and now that connection just made a lot of sense. That yeah, during COVID, I mean it happened. It just happened that way. I got my contract in March, right as of 2020 when it all hit, and I had 6 months to write a book. And if I did not have that project to do, I would have really struggled immensely, mentally and emotionally. And that
Yeah,
project really, got me through the worst of it, gave me something to focus on and work towards. And yeah, especially I had a business, I had an apothecary herbal business right before COVID. When I got divorced, I started that. It was very successful, but I decided I didn't want to. It just wasn't the path I wanted to go in.
mm,
Creating products on a shelf. Um,
yeah,
I wanted to work more intimately with people and their connection with nature, not providing a product. So right before COVID hit, I closed that business down, sold everything, and just wanted to go teach classes full time. And then we couldn't be gather in person.
yeah,
So I totally lost my business. Everything, I was not working. So I was so thankful to have this book contract and work on that, because otherwise, I don't know what situation I would have been in. Would have been pretty difficult though.
Yeah. Would your younger self enjoy the book that you've created? If you stumbled
Mm,
across the book that you've made when you were sort of 10, 15, would you have enjoyed it?
absolutely. I think my younger self would have, sorry, making me tear up a little bit. My younger self
No,
would have
that's
been so
okay.
so proud of.
Tears are powerful. We should never hold them in, you know. When they come to surface, that means there's something, like it's a tear of joy, it sounds like, not a tear of
Oh,
sadness.
absolutely, yeah.
They're the best ones.
Yeah, I would have been pretty happy with myself.
Yeah, so you can pat yourself on the back. I think that's one thing a lot of people lack. There's, especially in these times when there's so many struggles, is self-encouragement. You know,
Mm,
like if we've done something, yeah, we should pat ourselves on the back and say good job, no matter how insignificant or significant it is. So what's
yeah.
the book about?
The book is called Mushroom Wonderland, and it's about finding, how to find mushrooms in the wild, how to identify them, and what you can do with them. So some are edible, some are medicinal, and I also go into, the most toxic, deadly species as well.
Yeah, because
Um,
obviously, like we were saying earlier, with the safety, there is some that you do not want to, uh, you not want to eat. Is there also mushrooms that like? Because I see a lot of people say, even on YouTube, when I'm looking at videos to learn a bit more about plants and mushrooms, I see lots of people fondling them, like they're grabbing them, they're touching them, they're turning them. Whereas some mushrooms I look at and my instincts are saying, do not touch it. Is there some that are like actually can be harmful to your skin and to touch?
there is, there are no mushrooms that cause any sort of issue, to touch them. There's no mushrooms are not deadly to touch, and you can even touch the most deadliest species of mushrooms, without
Just
any issue.
uh, just don't lick your hands afterwards.
Even then, it would take you actually taking a bite and eating it and swallowing it, to cause any problem. I know of some very adventurous types who want to know what these mushrooms taste like, and they take a bite, they taste it, and spit it out, and live to tell the tale.
Oh, okay, nice. That takes
Yeah,
another element of precaution off there. It's just,
yeah,
some of the, not that some of them you, like I said, don't want to just go around touching every mushroom I see, but some, like I said, there's a little hesitation. I'm like, should I even be near it?
right. Yeah, there is quite a bit of fear around mushrooms. I think that's seems to be a English or European type thing, that has transferred over even into America,
Yeah.
and that, I'm not sure where it comes from, if it's like folklore or just this idea that mushrooms, somebody somewhere ate one and died from it, and
Yeah. I have a couple of
inspire.
little theories that I thought of, but they're again just conspiracies, really. They're just like ideas that are floated in my head, and I was like, because I've not tried any of the mushrooms that say have strong effects, but I've I've spoke to people on my podcast that have, and people that working towards using them for mental health and
Mhm.
working towards them for all different types of healing and conscious development and all sorts of all these things that they say they're so useful for.
Yeah,
And then I just wondered, like, well, if you was to put a taboo on them that they're all dangerous, that's just going to stop a lot of people from having that independence. You know,
right.
whether that's pharmaceutical wise or whatever wise. I thought, I wonder if these have been put out as tales to try and just put you off going near them because they're actually really good.
Absolutely, yeah.
Possible. Yeah. So how is the book purchasable? Where's the best place if someone wants to now get this or get it as a? It sounds like it would be a perfect gift for a child, a growing child, not a toddler, but
Yeah, absolutely. This it can be found on Amazon, and a lot of bookstores are carrying it, and of course, also my publisher, Countryman Press. You can buy it from them directly. Um, but yeah, if you buy it on Amazon, leave a nice review. Always helps.
yeah. Reviews these days are so important,
Right.
including anyone listening to this podcast. Yeah, they need to review it. It really does help.
It
And
does.
I'm really curious because I'm getting into book writing myself, and one of my other guests only a week ago was a crowdfunding they specialize in just crowdfunding books for authors, and
Oh,
that's
wow.
their thing. So how did you go around, and if you chose, how did you go around publishing to self-publishing? How did that sort of happen?
Yeah, I actually did not self-publish. I went through a publisher, and it was quite an easier process than I had heard that it was. I hadn't, let's see, the first publisher I approached, I gave them a proposal. It was more, my original book was more about more of a mushroom cookbook. This book only has a few kind of introductory recipes, but I had originally had this vision of a more advanced cookbook where you could do some, kind of some crazy things with mushrooms. And the first publisher almost had me sign a contract, but they changed their mind at the last minute. Recommended me to an agent, and through an agent who really helped me out, she was able to take my proposal to all of the contacts that she had with major publishers, and we ended up settling with Countryman Press, and they loved it, but they were like, well, let's just do a regular mushroom book, and with lots of pictures and kind of whimsical, and something approachable for the everyday person. And here we are.
Oh, nice. Yeah, because I was looking at that, and when I was looking at publishers, they're all saying no unsolicited material, get your agent. So I was like, okay, need to look for an agent now. But it was the publisher that actually directed you to an agent. So that's interesting.
Yeah. It was, well, the first publisher I went to, I had a connection with one of their other authors that I'm really close friends with. And so he recommended me to the editor, and the editor looked over my stuff and was like, oh, okay, yeah, this makes sense. So, like they say, it's who you know can
Yeah.
make a really, really big difference.
Yeah. And how much of your book did you need to show them? Like, how much concept did you have to get started? Was it you had to have a certain amount? Because from the type
Um,
of book that I'm looking in, they want like 3 chapters and your hypnosis to start.
yeah, I had an introduction, also kind of a summary of like why I'm writing this book, a table of contents, and one sample chapter, and then also with being a this type of book, I had to do a one sample profile of one of the mushrooms that I featured, and of course photos. Photos totally help a lot if it's going to be a photo type book. And then, yeah, an outline.
Yeah, and I've seen your pictures on Instagram. They're all very nicely put together, very nice pictures. And so with the book, was you the photographer for your own book as well?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and I've got just a few, because I don't want to take up all your time here. I think we're nearly up to an hour, and I just have a few short questions that are like quick fire questions.
Yeah.
And where's the best place for people to follow what you do, or to get in contact with you if they want to check out your courses? And your course, I'm guessing, like you said, you're in, did you say Southern California?
Yep, I'm in Southern California. I have a immersive course. It's kind of a online and in person. So I do occasionally accept people to just do the virtual portion of it. If they're coming from anywhere else in the country, or even worldwide, I'd be open to bringing in people
Oh, that's
outside of.
nice. You can do that
Yeah.
digitally. Like, so many things have changed with what's happened, and I imagine that's opened up that area for you quite a bit. Never thought about
Absolutely.
a digital foraging course,
I was very
cooking
much
course.
against yeah, I was very much against it at the beginning, but then I'm like, this doesn't seem like it's going away, so might as well embrace it.
Yeah, and what was and you have an Instagram
Oh
account,
yes.
and that's Jess.Starwood.
Yes, my Instagram is jess.starwood, and that's where I'm at mostly. I'm trying not to use Facebook quite as much. But yeah, Instagram is a great way to find me. My website for my regular classes is jstarwood.com. And then I have my program is called The Wild Path, and that can be found at thewildpath.org.
Okay, great. All right, well, anyone listening, be sure to go check them out and see more of what you're up to. And like I said, just follow on Instagram for some inspiration and some beautiful pictures, especially if you like mushrooms. And a quick question, actually, why is it mushrooms that you like so much?
I feel like they're so mysterious. They're so, they've been in, they're tasty. They're medicinal. They help us. Some of them help us see life in a different way, and they're everywhere. They're literally everywhere, and they're invisible, but then they're not. Yeah, there's just so much mystery about them that intrigues me, and I feel like a lot of other people are finding them, interesting as well. So
Intriguing is definitely the word I would say for me. Like I walk along and when I see one, I'm very intrigued, even no matter which one it is, what type it is. I'm not even thinking whether it's edible or not. I want to look at it. I want to check it
right.
out. Something about them that's just different, something appealing. I've got some very short little questions, and I think I know the answer to this one. But what do you prefer, cats or dogs?
Cats, definitely.
What's your favorite color?
All the greens.
Oh, all the greens.
All the greens.
What excites you?
Adventure, something new, travel.
What turns you off?
The city, people.
What sound or noise do you love?
The sound of the wind through the trees in the mountains.
Oh, that's exactly the same as what the wheelchair guy said, who likes to go mushroom foraging.
Yeah.
And what sound or noise do you hate?
Lawnmowers and leaf blowers.
What would you say is your greatest fear?
Ooh. Shoot.
What came to mind first?
Losing my kids would be that. Yeah.
What do you challenge about yourself?
To become a better public speaker.
What do you love about yourself?
Feel my authenticity, just being me.
Nice. What do you love in others?
When they are authentic as well.
Okay, and what do you love about animals? That's the final question.
As I'm sitting here staring in my cat's eyes, just their non-judgment. Although I think my cats judge me.
Well, see, my love Danielle, she constantly thinks the cats are judging her. I keep telling her, look, they're not as concerned with you as you think. They love you, but they're not judging your every action. She's like, oh no, I think they are.
It's just how they look.
Yeah. Nice. It's been beautiful to hear your story and to get to know you some more, and for you to open up and just, like you say, be authentic. I think it's really important for people to be authentic, to be open, and we live in a beautiful time to share and connect. Like I said, I'm in Spain now, and you're over in LA, or California. So it's great to have heard some more of your story, and I really look forward to following your content and seeing more of what you get up to.
Fantastic. Yeah, it's been lovely chatting. This is a little different than my normal interview, so it was great to get into some different things.
Yeah, like I said, I've had the most. This is my brother actually said you got the most random collection of guests that you've had out of anyone. And I said, because it's the Selfish podcast, because it's selfishly, I just love to hear people's lives and their journeys and stories. But it's also about them. It's their self, and everyone has a self. And it's even a conversation with some people on the podcast if self exists, because some people say there is no self, So it's all within that concept. And everyone's unique. Everyone has a story. And I think everyone can gift people with their experiences and help them shift their own mind and mindset, including myself. I always find such wealth of information from people talking to me and sharing. So I am truly, really appreciative from everything you said. It really does make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have a beautiful rest of your night or day. Sorry, it's night for me. It's day for you. So
Yeah,
you've got the
yeah.
whole day ahead.
Just getting started. Well, thank you very much. Bye-bye.
All right, bye. Thank you so much for being here and listening to the Selfish Podcast. I'm your host, Luke Greenheart, and I appreciate you being here. Don't forget to check out my YouTube channel. Just search Luke Greenheart on YouTube. You'll find me. Check out my website, lukegreenheart.com. Have an amazing day, and stay tuned for more episodes. I'll be interviewing guests on their path of self-development, their path to self, getting to know them in much more intimacy, much more depth, sharing and connecting with all so we can have a much more blissful, joyful, and productive life together. All right, much love. Have a great day.